Ladies and gentlemen, members of the City Council, please attend a call meeting of the City Council to be held in the 6th floor conference room, 801 Crawford Street, 5 p.m., Tuesday, March 10, 2015, for the purpose of a public work session. In addition, you may consider a motion to go into closed meeting by order of the mayor. Mr. Cherry. Here. Dr. Edmonds. Here. Mr. Meeks. Mr. Moody. Here. Ms. Simmons. Dr. Whitaker. Present. Mayor Wright. Here. Mr. Rep.
We'll start off tonight with a real person this time as opposed to an image. We have Sherry back, and I'm so glad that she is back. And we want to give you an update on what happened in the General Assembly. Remember, this was the short session, and the big item that they had to address was any amendments to the current budget, which is the biennial budget for the state, 2014 to 2016. And so, Sherry, let's have an update, and we'll be using this handout.
Thank you, John. Good evening.
Good evening.
Right? Members of council, city manager, and staff. It's really good to be back with my Portsmouth family and press instead of wrestling with the camera. I'm going to give you a brief update on what happened at the 2015 General Assembly session. It was, all in all, by all means, a pretty good session. It's better than we anticipated when we went up. The revenue projections had increased to about $474 million, which allowed more money to be funneled into various pots, and certain cuts that we were anticipating, like in K-12, didn't occur. So I'm going to walk you through this.
What about the state aid to locality?
Let me get there.
She's going to cover that.
I'm going to cover that.
Sir.
General Assembly adjourned today early. It was supposed to adjourn on the Saturday. They completed their work that Friday and left town on Saturday. The governor now has 30 days to sign the bills, amend them, veto them, what he's going to do by the end of this month. A veto session is scheduled for the 15th of next month. Out of our city's legislative package, our charter bill passed. Has been sent to the governor. Also, the bill on allowing council to appoint the board of zoning commissioners passed, and that's been sent to the governor as well for signature. We weren't successful with the bill for warrant procedures. That didn't go over very well, basically because it was felt, and that bill, to bring back to your memory, I see a little bit of, that bill was to allow the police officer to trade off to another officer, a charging officer, to take someone to get a warrant after doing the investigation, because there was a problem with getting your police officer, the original officer, to the magistrate if he got called away. So we were trying to have allowed to have another officer take over, but it didn't go over well. So anyway, that bill died. Also, we also had a bill in there to allow an alternative person from council to serve on HR TAC in case of an emergency. That bill also died. We had one more piece of legislation, a request in our package that's dealing with flooding, mandating disclosure for flooding. That was not actually introduced as a bill, but it will be going to the Housing Commission for further study. So we're going to be following up on that, and we're looking for some action on that, similar to the same thing we did with derelict structures a few years ago, and we were successful with that measure. On the budget, again, because of the increase in the funding and some maneuvering they did with the budget, restructuring some things, we didn't get the hits to K-12 that we thought we were going to get. The funding for the city of Portsmouth, estimated distribution for 2015 is $90,864,805. And for 16, the estimated distribution is $91,976,238.
Where is that in comparison to last year's, Sherry? Is it a bump up or a level?
It is a bump up, yes, in both cases. You sure? Yes, bump up.
I know we just had our joint meeting with the school board, and they talked about the two possibilities of whichever budget is passed and the amendments that they were offering to kind of get some idea of what they would be looking like, the size of their gap last year. So
They were more cohesive this time because of the fact that the Republicans control the legislature. So it wasn't as much of a fight on the budget this year. Conference. Teachers and support salary initiatives, their incentives, that's going to be a 1.5% increase. The state share of the salary increase is effective as of August the 16th. The local required match is based on an average of 15% or 1.5% with an effective date of no later than January 1st, 2016. School divisions must certify that a minimum 1.5 increase will be provided to employees by that date. The amendment also specifies that in meeting the salary increases, to be eligible for the incentive funding, school divisions may not include any increases that were provided for FY16 offset the cost of the required member contributions to VRS. And also this allocation is contingent on the state revenue forecast performance. So what that means is that most of the increases that you'll see for the state and for state employees compensation, there's also been an increase included for deputy sheriffs, for entry-level deputy sheriffs in sheriff's offices as well as in regional jails. As of the 30th of June, if the comptroller doesn't make any adjustments to the revenue forecast, then everything stands. If there's some changes made and the revenue doesn't come in as they anticipated, then they'll be calling for a reforecast. So that's kind of where we're at with this right now.
A different way to say this, if the funds are there, then these increases. If the funds are not there, as determined by the comptroller, then these increases don't go in.
To answer your question, Mayor, they did eliminate the $30 million in the revision of state aid to localities, which estimated to the Portsmouth that would have been a hit of $5.7 million, but we're not going to lose at this point. And, I'm sorry, got that one wrong. It was $600 million for that one. And for the 599, I'm reading off of two different sheets. Level funding for 599. There's a whole harmless formula that we were able to get passed a couple of years ago. And the reason why it was whole harmless is because under the formula for 599, there are certain criteria that's taken into consideration, which includes crime and population. And in Portsmouth, our crime levels have gone down, and so has our population. So we were losing money. So a few years ago, we were able to get a whole harmless formula put in place. And because of the whole harmless formula, we're now getting 658,000 rather than 658 million rather than 5,786 under the old formula. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You said 600 million versus 5 million.
Yeah, 658,170. I'm sorry. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, 658,000.
Now the payback hit, the potential impact would have been 600,000.
Yes, sir.
Okay, 600.
For the
And that got eliminated.
Okay.
Yeah. Sports Hall of Fame, there was no reductions. They put the money back that they removed out, so $250,000 going back into the budget for the Sports Hall of Fame.
So is that just a pass-through fund?
Yes.
That's just it.
We had a good success with some budget language. There was some budget language that was included in there that directs the Commonwealth Transportation Board to also consider municipally owned bridges for improvements, not just state-owned bridges. So this is our avenue to travel to get money for our Churchland Bridge. So that was a big one.
So that was a good one.
Yeah, that was a good one. And on the Jordan Bridge, we were very successful in keeping the governor's language stricken from the budget that would have had that language in it. So yeah, we worked really hard on that one. So that was a success as well.
And that we worked in partnership with the governor's office on this. And so the language that was put in at the last minute in 2014 was stricken.
Can we thank Delegate Jones?
Sir?
Should we thank Delegate Jones?
Oh, we should.
Okay.
And we will, and we have.
I'd like to take a minute to kind of go over this omnibus transportation bill with you. This was a big one that passed. And I just kind of explain some of the things to you. What it does is that it revises the highway allocation formula in order to get more money back into the districts rather than the statewide current discretionary formulary. It increases transparency. The bill reduces the number of pots from 10 to 3 and focuses on key needs: 40% to fixed bridges and pavements, 30% to districts for grants, 30% for key statewide needs. Its funds for good state repair projects will be distributed based on a priority ranking system that takes into consideration the number and cost of structurally deficient bridges and the mileage and cost to replace deteriorated pavements. The Commonwealth Transportation Board must approve the priority ranking system, which is that House Bill 2 bill that we've been talking about for the last couple of years, where they're going to have criteria to rank projects. And no district can receive more than 17.5% of the pot. So it's a fair distribution of the state funds. For Hampton Roads District, it means that for state of good repair, we're looking at about $35 million. For construction district grants, we're looking at $34.5 million. And for a total of $69.5 million. And under the old primary, secondary urban formula, we were getting like $54.5 million. So it's an increase of money coming to us, for sure.
And this was the initiative that was kicked off last year by the Speaker Howell, when he came and talked about wanting to do something to kind of reshift where the focus were throughout the regions as well as the rural areas and all. And so, this was the final compromise, and this was the result of
after the House Bill 2, because he initiated the House Bill 2 for the prioritizing of projects, and this came on the heels of that. Yes.
And again, Delegate Jones picked this up and worked with the governor to get this, so it was bipartisan.
Very good.
This bill also provides transit funding to replace aging buses, which would be a help to localities, because it would be less on us for them coming to us for those funds. And it also it's more transparency. Another thing they did in this bill is that they fixed it so that the members of the Commonwealth Transportation Board can only be removed for cause and not at the whim of the governor. So they gave them more autonomy in making decisions. So it's a really good bill, and it's going to help us quite a bit. There was nothing done to the B-poll tax, and the reduction for regional jails, there were some changes made there, but it doesn't impact us for the short and the long of it. If you already have a jail in place prior to August the 15th or July 1st of this year, and it's a regional jail, you still can get 50% match. But they've made changes for other jails, new expansions, and things of that nature. It would be like a 25% match. So we're okay.
But if we were to add on to that fourth part over there, the regional jail,
we should be okay.
We are okay.
50 or 25%?
50.
50, okay.
Right.
Yeah, we should be okay. We had to fight that one as well.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Councilman Meeks.
I'm sorry I'm late, but where do we get with the Jordan Bridge? Did you go?
Governor's language. We struck it.
Yeah,
we worked with the governor's office to have the language struck out the budget, and it wasn't replaced. They tried to put it back in, but we were successful not having that done.
Okay.
That's good.
So it's gone.
Yeah, that's
Good deal.
yeah.
All right.
Any questions?
Very good.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So we
Good
fared
job.
out fairly well. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
what you're saying?
Yes, we did. All in all, yeah.
Good job, Sheriff.
And thank you guys for your support. Appreciate
How
it.
are all of the steak dinners and the long nights and
Sure you're
working
right,
in and out of
Mayor.
the hotel?
Sure you're right, Mayor. Thank you, guys.
Very good job, Sheriff.
Thank
Thank you very much.
The next item is Virginia rules, and this will be a briefing by Sharon.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, staff. I'd like to brief you tonight about a program that the City Attorney's Office has been working with the schools, the Portsmouth Police Department, and the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office to bring to our 7th grade students here in Portsmouth. And I have with me tonight Dr. Marie Shepard. She's the Director of Student Services for Portsmouth Public Schools to address any questions that you all may have as it relates to the schools. First of all, what is Virginia Rules? It's a Virginia-specific law-related education program for youth in the Commonwealth. The entire curriculum is web-based, and the website is absolutely incredible. It's absolutely interactive. It's filled with different worksheets, lesson plans, and is continually updated as the laws change and needs and resources are identified. This program was created, maintained, and managed by the Office of the Attorney General. And there's a full-time Virginia Rules program coordinator that's available to assist localities or any agencies that want to bring this program into their community. All of the lesson content is specifically correlated with SOL requirements. And the idea behind the program is to train instructors, particularly law enforcement professionals, attorneys, and the like, and train them in the curriculum and get them in front of our young people. Get them in classrooms, get them at recreation centers, teaching various modules that I'll talk about later that are in the Virginia Rules curriculum. Right now, there are only 2 localities in Hampton Roads that are taking advantage of this program. And I have to say the best part about this program is it's absolutely free. You just have to take advantage of it and try and get it started in your community. And right now, Norfolk and Virginia Beach are the only 2 Hampton Roads localities that are taking advantage of this. And Virginia Beach's program has reached over 10,000 students. And Norfolk's program has reached over 1,000 students. And they actually won a grant that has enabled them to fund a part-time position to further manage their program and have it continue to grow. Next slide, please. These are just a few of the program goals. As you can see for yourself, these are all things that we all want our students to learn, educate them further about the law, help them develop skills to make better decisions and avoid breaking the laws, and continue to encourage active citizenship in our schools and communities. When I learned about this program, I immediately researched and tried to find out whether or not we were currently doing something like this in Portsmouth, and we're not. I met with interim superintendent Dr. Pat Fisher last year, and she was very receptive to trying to work with me to bring this program into our schools, and she directed me to work with, I have to say, the wonderful Dr. Marie Shepard. And in between our regular responsibilities, we've been trying to find time to get this program together, and I think we're finally on track. Both Chief Hargis and our new Commonwealth Attorney, Ms. Morales, have agreed to provide a number of their police officers and Commonwealth attorneys to be trained to become instructors in the Virginia Rules program. Next slide, please. So why would we want to teach this? Obviously, we just want to keep informing our youth and try and reduce incidents and crime. It is a very interactive format that I'm going to talk about. And what's I think is very special about this program is I think it will be interesting for students to hear this kind of information from actual law enforcement personnel, lawyers, and civil servants. So it's not just the same teacher they see every day. It's new faces in uniform, lawyers in their suits. The hope is also that the instructors can draw on their own personal, professional experience and kind of tie in some of the curriculum with what's going on here in Portsmouth to really engage the students. And some of the tools that are provided by Virginia Rules to enable this to occur are there are thorough lesson plans provided for all instructors, and I've provided one sample lesson plan for each of you. There are pre-tests that the students take before the instructors come in to kind of gauge what their knowledge is about the subject. There are various worksheets, and there's a post-test that the students take after the instruction is done, so we can kind of gauge whether or not they're actually absorbing the material. Next slide, please. Right now, yeah, thank you. There are 22 lesson plans, and Virginia Rules did recently add a gangs lesson plan that also includes a video. Here, just a sample of the first 6 lesson plans that really just talk about an introduction to the law, the judicial system, specifically the juvenile justice system, and this is just a sampling. Next slide. Here are some additional lesson topics that the curriculum encompasses, and I think a lot of these are very interesting and applicable because they're issues that are faced by today's preteens and teenagers. And this program is specifically targeting middle school and high schoolers. I have before you one of the lesson plans, and specifically it's the Student Responsibilities Lesson Plan. And in working with Dr. Shepard, we identified student responsibilities as being the module that we want to use for our pilot program in the 7th grade classrooms. And how did we arrive at that? Well, there is a section on the Virginia Rules website that addresses needs assessment. And it links to the Virginia Safe Schools Information Resource data and will actually pull up the top 5 offenses by incident number for the particular school district. So we pulled up Portsmouth and got the listing of the top 5 offenses by number of incidents in our schools, and from there the website connects you to suggested topics to address those specific issues. And the one that popped up was student responsibilities. So where we are at this point, we've got the Office of Attorney General Program Coordinator coming down here to Portsmouth, specifically right here to this room, to conduct an instructor training on March 27th, and we are looking at trying to get before the students by the end of April. And again, we're targeting all of the 7th grade students in the 3 Portsmouth middle schools. So do you have any questions? I just wanted to, the City Attorney's Office just wanted to brief you on what we were doing and how we intend to do it, and I hope to let you know how everything turns out.
Well, that's great. Let me ask then, maybe for Dr. Shepard, would you make this part of the curriculum? And if you would, at what time during the course of the day would you interject an information session like this for the 7th grader? Is there a student activity time you do it, or you actually?
What we're going to do, good evening, what we're doing, Mayor, is doing it as a pilot program. And what we're doing is going through our physical education classes. We have, each school has a different number of physical education classes during each period. We want to make sure that all of our 7th grade students have an opportunity to be a part of the classes. So we're going to go through those, because during that time, you know, SOLs are coming along, and we don't want to go into any of those core classes to disturb that process. So we're doing it through the least place of resistance, I guess. And so we're doing it through our physical education classes. Now, moving forward, it will go through our social studies program later on. But right now, we want to make sure that we sort of got our foot in the door and had an opportunity to, with this pilot program, to work with our students so that they can have an opportunity to see what it's about.
All right, very good. One of the things, yeah, Dr. Edmonds, go ahead.
How long will the class be?
It's a 2-day session class. What we decided to do is to do it over 2 days, and then the pretest will be given by the physical education teachers, and then the instructors will be in there with the students for 2 days, and then they will, at the end of that second day, do a post-test with the students.
Okay, good.
And just a note, and we hadn't announced this yet, and I hadn't got council's total approval, but we're having our community day this year in August, I think, was it the 22nd? And one of the things that we were talking about trying to interject was we wanted to use the Intellos. We wanted to have the bands there to do like a little competition, but during the interim, we wanted to have quick 5-10 minute sessions, information sessions about bullying and things like that while we had the people there. So we want them in the actual amphitheater, sitting down, enjoying themselves, but also trying to introduce conflict awareness and things like that in there. So maybe we can interject some of the Virginia rules with our community day, because again, when you get those kids, we have community days each year. We try to bring our community together, but we need to make sure we're educating our kids on a lot of these things, and it's almost like a kickoff rally to back to school. I think we reserve August the 22nd. Yeah, August 22nd, the Intellos.
We did, and we talked with Ken McDonald. They have set that date aside for that particular event.
Okay, and it is. It's just so vital that we introduce our young people to all of these pieces here. So I'm pleased with what you guys did.
One of the things,
yes, ma'am?
too, that helps with this is that it helps to continue to foster that positive relationship between law enforcement and our students as well.
A lot of it is because they don't know and they don't, And Dr. Whitaker?
Yeah. Dr. Shepard, you said this would be a two-day course or throughout 2 days
just 2 days. No, this is just the pilot program, and it's just for our 7th grade. The instructors will be in each class for 2 days.
Oh, okay.
And what we're looking at doing, based on the number of instructors that we have, we're going to go into one school and complete that one school, then move on to the next.
Oh, okay.
And to make sure that we have it complete.
So we got folks from the police department and the Commonwealth Attorney. You'll get together and have a little joint rollout or presentation to the kids.
The way we intend to do it is have 2 instructors teach each class. So you have 1 police officer and 1 attorney. So they're kind of co-teaching.
Okay, that's very good. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Dr.
One last thing. Is there any criteria as to what school you will select?
First?
Yes.
Not necessarily so. We were just talking and brainstorming a few minutes ago. Depending on the number of instructors that we have, we'll sort of suggest how we get started with it. If we have 10, we will start at Churchland, because that's one of our larger middle schools, and move that out the way first. And because they have 5 classes each period of the day, that means there would be 2 teachers per class. So they would go ahead for the first 2 days and first 2 days of the session and get those out of the way. Then we'll move on to the next school.
Okay, Dr. Whitaker.
Do you know, after you get beyond the pilot, whether there would be an additional emphasis? For example, right now it look like it's more of a focus on criminal law crimes. Will it be an additional focus on other areas that may be instructive to them?
But if you look in there, because of all the different topics that they have, and with family those family responsibilities and the decision making and those types of things, because it's dealing with the law piece and that type of thing, the office will be working basically with the social studies department, and we will get Mr. Carter and the social studies department on board, and they will begin to discern which areas that they want to go for.
Okay.
The goal is to hopefully grow it and hopefully get as big as Norfolk or Virginia Beach, but make it into something that can be rolled out into high schools eventually, but just take advantage of it because it is free.
Yes.
And you say the beach has right now about 10,000 students, and Norfolk has about 1,000?
According to their website,
have gone through this little pilot program.
Are currently, they're using Virginia Beach is currently using Virginia rules in its schools, and so is Norfolk, and they've reached at least 10,000. And then in Norfolk, I'm sure it needs to be updated. So.
Thank you very much. Good job. Excellent.
This brings us to rezoning request Z-15-01. This is the rezoning application that was submitted by Mr. Moody, and you considered it last month.
We deferred it, so we...
Yes, sir. You deferred it so that he could work with planning department, which he did.
Okay.
And we want to report the status of that because it comes back up.
Yeah.
And so Bob's going to give you a status briefing. Remember, he wanted to rezone the property to build 2 residential units. One is encumbered with a billboard.
Good evening, Mayor Wright, members of council. And I'll keep this brief. Just try to provide a little clarity of the situation. You had quite an engaged conversation at your meeting on the 24th about all the issues out there. So just kind of walk through a little bit about it.
Louis is a pretty knowledgeable guy.
Exactly. I think everybody grasps that. What you have 2 6,000 square foot lots. They're zoned general mixed use. And he does have a whole list of uses that are permitted under general mixed use, except for what he wants to do, which is single family detached. Okay, so he wants to build, one on each lot. So in order to get there, he's proposed a rezoning, and as you're aware, one of the concerns was raised during the process was the fact you have an existing billboard, and normally in the city, that kind of a commercial billboard is something reserved for industrial districts, not residential. So as he's proposing moving from general mixed use to more of a residential type district, that sort of raises from good zoning practice, kind of raises a red flag about you're moving to a more restricted residential, yet you have this billboard there. I would want to advise you, just so you'll be aware of this, that no matter which way you go with this, that billboard will be there. He's got there's no obligation to take the billboard down, and there's no situation in which he couldn't get something approved while the billboard is sitting there. So the billboard is there whichever way. So if you leave it, as we went through this in the memo the city manager sent out, there's basically what we would say there's 3 alternatives. One would be to deny the request. That would leave it at general mixed use. And one reason I tell you that's something to just keep in mind from a zoning standpoint is under general mixed use, if you wanted to do an attached residential, which is permitted, basically like a townhouse, you can do that with a 6,000 square foot lot. But the rest of the uses under general mixed use require 10,000 square feet. So if he were to do anything else that's allowed under general mixed use, which includes a lot of other type commercial activities, he'd need both of his lots to do that. So back to the reason why we'd say we would suggest you not split the zoning, because it really would become restrictive on that last remaining 6,000 square foot GMU lot if you did that. So again, I think the option you would have is to you could deny the request and leave him with his existing zoning. You could approve the request, and we would say if you're going to approve the request, approve it for both lots. That would allow single family, as he's requested, single family unit on each lot. And those, as you've seen in your package, are basically 1,000 square foot residential unit on each one. And then the third option,
that's what he wants.
That's what he wants.
Okay.
The third option, which was discussed at some length, was should the zoning get split, and it would just be our opinion from the planning department looking at it, discussing this with the zoning staff. The split zone really creates more problems. It would allow him to build one house, but it really becomes super restrictive on the parcel that's left over with the GMU zoning on it. It would also have the billboards, but it would be pretty restrictive, and it would only have one use, basically, the attached residential, which he said he doesn't want to do. And basically the rest of the GMU uses require a larger lot size that would be left over. So that's the reason we would say that splitting the zoning is really not a good thing. So I would just sort of say, whichever way you want to go, go all in. It'd be our recommendation, go all in one way. They either approve both or deny both, but splitting the zoning is really not a very good situation for anyone.
Okay. I would be inclined. I thought about what he said and what Mr. Hartley was trying to counter with, that we're probably better off to allow him to go and build both of them. I mean, the billboards are in a residential area. It's not like it's a commercial district. And to be able, now he mentioned something about another one down the street somewhere.
There's another parcel next, and same has a billboard on it, same exact sort of situation with a 6,000 square foot lot.
But is that person also under the same restrictions that he's under? Or not? They're not?
Their grandfather.
Their grandfather.
It's an older house.
Okay. Yeah,
older sign.
Okay.
I went by it a lot after the meeting.
So, I mean, I thought about that. I think, and I don't know what the rest of y'all, I think we should let him do it. But go ahead, Dr. Whitaker and Mr. Chair.
Right. I'm inclined, to support him building the 2 single-family homes there. When you go to that site, I think that's Main Street and Portsmouth Boulevard. Yeah, there's single-family homes already there. So
these are single-family lots. If you look at this, we would say this would be a typical 6,000 square foot single-family lot. This is not a large commercial part. Even though it's had commercial use on it in the past, it really, when you look at it, and if you look at behind it, it lays out like a single-family lot.
Right. So it wouldn't be inconsistent.
No, it wouldn't be out of order.
It's consistent with the zoning that surrounds it as well.
Right, and also it's not violating any law per se. It's just a practice. I noticed it right.
There'd be no violation here at all.
Right.
What we would normally say again is, and this is I will say the last meeting was kind of an unusual one, and then we had two applications. One where staff's recommending approval and having an applicant argument against that one, which is unusual. We also had an application where someone's trying to downzone property, and we're having an issue with downzoning, which is unusual as well. But in that case, there's no violation. Again, the question about the billboard, which was a lot of the discussion, whether he built a single-family house or if he built an attached residential, the billboard's allowed to stay. So whether it's 1 unit, 2 units, the billboard, the city has no ability to make the billboard go away, and he does have a contract and isn't interested in taking the billboard down, and we have no ability to make him do that.
So I thought it was a personnel or safety issue, but if we allow him to do a multiple unit there, you still have people there, so it just defeats. Right. It removed that part from my concern, which put me back to, hey, we ought to just go and let the guy do.
We did not raise a safety issue with the sign for that exact reason, because if you if you do 2 units there, for example. I'm not going to say, it's dangerous for 1 family, but safe for 2. We're not going to argue that point, obviously.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. And actually, to build multifamily there would look a little funny because all the other houses are single family. The other thing is the lots right next door are zoned urban residential. So, and if you look carefully, you'll see some survey stakes out there on one of the lots, which means somebody's getting ready to build, thinking about building a house. So to deny him the opportunity to build a house on that lot when the other lot's been surveyed, obviously for a house, because that's what it's zoned for, I think would be wrong. So I'm in support of we approved the rezoning, allow him to build a house. I checked and I asked the fact to find out about the billboard. I think it's a 5-year contract. So either way you turn the house, you're either gonna have you
got a billboard.
You can have a billboard either on the side or in front of your yard, whichever way you put the house. But the person who's building the other house is going to have the same problem.
Right.
So
Damn if you do.
And I just mentioned, to go back to your meeting on the 24th, there was some discussion about if you were to reorient the lots to Main Street instead of Portsmouth, you have the same exact scenario. It doesn't change anything.
And I talked to him about that. I'm talking to him, asking him about that, and he'll turn the house anyways. Whoever wants to live there will turn it.
Right.
So I guess depends on where you want to billboard on the side or in front, in your front yard. But I think we ought to go ahead on it and approve the rezoning because, as Dr. Whitaker said, all the houses on Main Street,
all consistent,
they're residential. Yes. And then going down the street, you have a couple of residential, then you got a business, then you got mostly residential.
Right.
So
and I think if you looked at your zoning map that was provided in your pack, you'll see the consistent zoning right behind these lots that you are behind it.
Okay. So, Dr. Edmonds?
Thank you, Mayor. This is the direction that we guided him into, so he's satisfied with what we're going to be voting on tonight.
I think he'd be satisfied if you approved his rezoning, yes.
So he'll be happy, glad.
I hope so.
Thank you, Bob. Very good.
That was a good move to defer that so we get the time to work through and get everybody comfortable. The next is a update on the groundwater permitting. We briefed you in January on this, and we want to bring you up to date because we've met with the state and we want to report out.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Here just to give you a brief update on where we are with our groundwater permitting process. We briefed you in January, and since that meeting, we've had our follow-up meeting with DEQ, and so I just want to bring you up to speed on that. Just very briefly, just a very quick reminder of the process and where we are. We have 5 wells in Suffolk. 2 are used in daily production. The other 3 are for drought wells. And we're what's called a conjunctive use plant. We use both groundwater and surface water as part of our daily production. We've done that for many years. And we use mainly the groundwater for fluoridation and pH control, and DEQ regulates groundwater across the state. That dates back to 1973 with the original Groundwater Management Act, and we are currently operating without an approved DEQ permit. No fault of ours. It used to be they called them Certificate of Groundwater Rights, then they changed to a permitting process, and through the years they've just allowed us to continue under that old certificate, but even though we have gone through the steps to apply for permits like we're supposed to. We have the 5 wells. You can see the varying capacities. We have a total capacity, and what our certificate is for 15 million gallons of groundwater a day. We don't, and historically have not used anywhere close to that amount. Our average production.
Which ones of those are we using? The 2 that we're using for daily production?
Wells 1 and 2 are the ones we use for daily production.
Okay.
And then 3 through 5 are our drought wells.
And we have a map that shows the location.
Right, that's the next.
We're water rich, Mayor.
Yeah, oh boy, we can convert that.
We can convert it to cash and be in good shape.
But put this in context. What's our daily average consumption?
Our daily average consumption in Portsmouth is about, our total just in Portsmouth is only about 11 million gallons. When you add our bulk water sales to Suffolk and Chesapeake, our total daily production runs about 17.5 million gallons a day.
So we nearly could supply all of our water needs through our wells. And many localities west of here do that. I mean, their primary source, particularly for towns, is a well.
And our capacity is what now?
Well, the well capacity is 15 MGD, or 15.4 is what our certificate that we've operated on all these many decades is what we're allowed to use.
Okay. And I think before you put up a graph showing somebody did, you talked about going from Interstate 95 back and where we went in.
That groundwater management area stretches all the way from 95 east and from Northern Virginia all the way down to North Carolina. That's the groundwater management area that we're in, that's regulated by the state.
This is the aquifer that if you go down about 100 feet, you hit a clay lens. And so it's from that point down to bedrock.
Okay.
And bedrock slopes down. It comes out at the fall line at 95 and goes on a slope down to the beach where it's about 1,000 feet down. And back before people pumped that too much, it was an artesian aquifer, which meant that it had enough pressure. If you put a pipe in, the water would come out naturally. And now the hit in that aquifer has diminished.
Yeah, greatly. And which is what DEQ is trying to approach.
Yes, and you ask a question too, what's our capacity? Our capacity is also limited by the plant and by the lakes. And why don't you review that just for quickly?
Yeah, so our treatment plant itself has a rated capacity of 33 million gallons a day. So we could, if we maxed out our production capability, we're permitted to produce 33 million gallons of water per day. And like I said, we normally do about 17 is our average day, and it fluctuates. 2 weeks ago, in the bitterly cold weather, when everybody was running their faucets so their pipes wouldn't freeze, we maxed out at 25 MGD. So we went in 1 week, ramped up production 40%. And so that's what we have, that ability in terms of meeting demand. Our surface water safe yield is right around, safe yield meaning how much we can withdraw from our lakes on a daily basis, assuming normal precipitation throughout the year, how much we can withdraw and not negatively impact and draw our lakes down, is right around 20 MGD. And so when you add the capacity of our wells, that gives us the ability, so our capacity meets our production capability when you add those two numbers together.
And we have a contract with Norfolk back in the 2000s. There was a pipeline that Portsmouth paid for that connects a Norfolk lake to one of the lakes that's close to our water treatment plant. And so that gives us access to really the Lake Gaston water. As you know, the beach put the Lake Gaston line in, it comes and discharges into a stream that feeds the Norfolk Lakes. But if we use that water, we have to pay Norfolk for it.
Okay. Yes, sir. Dr. Wood.
So DEQ is recommending a limitation on the well production.
Correct.
Okay. So is there a cost differential between using the lake versus using the well that's going to impact the citizens?
Well, there is. I mean, the well water doesn't require the same level of treatment as the lakes, and so from a purely, when you look at pumping, electricity pumpage costs, chemical costs, and so forth, it's probably about 2.5 times more expensive to treat the lake water than it is the well water. But the reason we blend is because, if I mentioned before that our well water is naturally high in fluoride. So by blending, we can achieve natural fluoridation, which is desirous for good dental health. But you can actually have too much fluoride in the water, and that's regulated as a secondary contaminant if you have it too high. And so if we did purely well water and didn't blend with the lakes, we'd actually have to figure out a process to remove fluoride because our fluoride levels would be too high. So that's one of the reasons. So there's a water quality reason why we blend and not just rely on one versus the other.
So is there a potential then that if we go over the reduced amount that our citizens could be seeing an increase in the water bill?
No, they shouldn't. And I'm going to go in just a second. What they're proposing for they're proposing to reduce our amount that we can legally withdraw. The amount that they're proposing is higher than what our average use has been. So the concern that we have is during times of drought, because when we have times of drought and our lake levels, because of evaporation and so forth, and not replenished by rain, and those levels decrease, then we pump more groundwater to help, because actually the groundwater we pump for droughts actually goes into the lakes, and then it's withdrawn in that capacity. The drought wells are not pumped directly into the water treatment plant.
The water treatment plant is here, and we have wells as far up here. This is 460. This is the shopping center, 460, the old way to Richmond. If you were to turn at the old sewer treatment plant, many of you used to go that route, I'm sure. And so when we turn that well on, it's got to go into our lake in order to get to the water treatment plant. And those lakes, we've had some very severe droughts, and they look like a moonscape almost when that water level drops down, because that was the headwaters for the Nansemond River. A lot of trees were just, when they made the impoundment, they felled the trees, and they're in the bottom of the lake. But they're really there for drought purposes. To pick up on what Brian said, a city like Franklin uses well water 100%. Very high in fluoride, and it used to be a telltale sign that anybody that grew up in Franklin had yellow teeth. They call that mottled teeth. Well, you can get too much fluoride to the point where it impacts negatively on your skeleton. It starts to assault your bones. And so fluoride is a regulated chemical. And so think about, we process the water, it's finished, and on the finished side, we inject fluoride into it, or the well water, to get water treated with fluoride.
You know what Chesapeake had the problem with the fish tanks and the pregnant people?
Councilman Mix, hold on, I think.
Yes, sir.
Well, now, if we did all well water, then we would have to, it would be another cost to take the fluoride out of the water. That's what I was.
And you'd have to get it to the plant.
Correct.
Exactly.
Right.
So really, just sort of to summarize the update, if you recall from our previous presentation in January, we know that the groundwater levels have severely declined. More is being taken out than the aquifer can support. And if you recall, we talked about DEQ was targeting the top 14, or the 14 largest permitted users, which is both localities like Portsmouth and Chesapeake and Norfolk, Newport News. It's also like the West Point Paper Mill, IP over in Franklin, and other private companies that have withdrawal permits. So currently, it's 112. Those top 14 are permitted for 112 million gallons a day. We're 15. We're the third largest permitted user, even though we don't use that much. They're looking at shrinking the permitted use of those top 14 from 112 to between 50 and 60, so almost in half. Now, for a lot of folks, Portsmouth included, you might consider that what they would call a paper cut. They're reducing our permitted withdrawal level, but because we are not actually using that much, they're not looking at it as a severe negative impact. Our issue is that there are times when we do use more than that.
Brian, how does the military facilities we have factor in?
The military facilities, to my knowledge, most of them are connected to municipal supplies. I'm not aware that any of them have their own water source as far as wells. I know that the facilities in Portsmouth get our customers. So the Naval Hospital,
we sell to them. I know we sell.
Yeah.
So that's not factored.
And I know that Norfolk sells to the Navy base over there. I can't speak universally, but that's my understanding.
In 1981, the Navy in Norfolk tried to put a well at the Navy transmitter station in Suffolk, and Suffolk said no. Actually went to court, and it got settled. So Brian's right. To our knowledge, the Navy buys its water from the localities.
Okay.
That's right.
So just to summarize, we are planning on moving forward with DEQ to negotiate and renew our permit. You can see our negotiating leverage is limited. I mean, we'd like to say, well, we really want 5 MGD or 7, or we want to keep our 15. But the reality is we haven't been historically using that. We have to report what we use. They know how much we use, and they're like, you're not using that much. In addition, in the regulations, if we had a permit, which we don't, we're still in that certificate, but if we were a permitted user and we were using less than 60% of our permitted amount, they have the right in the middle of the permit term to come in and adjust our permit, because we're not using all that we are allocated with our permit. So our plan is to move forward. We are going to try and negotiate for a higher level. What they're proposing is a 10-year average withdrawal limit of 3.49 MGD. So what that means is, you can look at it as 3.49 MGD, but they're combining our daily operational use and our drought use. So for example, in times of drought, we could use more than 3.49 a day. But what they're doing is you add that over a 10-year period. Basically, we have a 10-year allotment of a set amount of water that comes out to 3.49 MGD. So we just have to be careful in how we use it. So there would be.
I don't want to get to year 8 and
well, there would be exactly.
go back and ask for forgiveness. We made a mistake. Right?
There will be times where we'll be able, both on a daily basis, a monthly basis, and an annual basis, to exceed that limit. That's what we've talked about, and that's what they are proposing to us as far as how we can try and manage the resource, but not be. But not be locked in. We can't ever exceed 3.49. So they recognize that there are times that we might need to do that. But
what do you see as far as the stresses on the lakes during those drought times? If we get into the fourth quarter of this 10-year cycle, right, and we're playing, how do we tweak how much out of the lake, because we've already done it in the first 7 years?
Right. We could certainly at that time. In true emergency situations, they can always suspend the state water can suspend the permit. We could go from that approach. My suspicion is they're going to say, you've got that contract with Norfolk, and you'll just have to exercise it. You just have to exercise it. And so you're talking paying in today's dollars, and that contract is indexed for inflation, but today it would be somewhere around $1.25 per 1,000 gallons is what we would be buying it, and then we have to treat it on top of that, versus groundwater, we might cost us a nickel to pump it out of the ground. So you can see that's from a cost perspective. If we were having to truly rely on it for a long period of time, that's going to impact our cost, which is why we truly want to use it only in an emergency situation and not become overly reliant upon it. But the good thing is it's there when we need it.
Is DEQ looking at the abusers in this and saying there's some localities just using too much? And I mean, they're just, because that's got to be driving some of this besides the diminishing of the head pressure in the thing. And do we see a potential of us putting restrictions out on people, when to use water, how to use water, if it gets that tight?
Well, typically during a drought, there are water restrictions that are put in by all the municipal governments in Hampton Roads, and you have that mechanism to do that in your code. It's just good practice. I think it's really hard to predict what would happen 7 years out if there was a severe drought. I think that there's a lot of political pressure that could be brought against the state on this. I mean, everything from national defense to the health and welfare of our citizens. Water is a basic thing. Brian is right that there's a big water source that lies out at Lake Gaston, and their first reaction would be probably turn the Norfolk. But if you have a drought, it's going to be an equal opportunity drought. It's going to affect us and most likely Gaston too. So it's not just a spotlight shining down on us. But they're proposing cuts, for example, in James City County that really cut into cuts into the quick of what they're doing. So it's not so much on the abusers. They're trying to really, in a big way, reduce the amount of groundwater that's being pumped.
Mr. Chair, question is related, but not unrelated, but related. Last time you briefed us about the minuscule amount of water we lost through our process.
Right.
How do we do during this cold spell with breaks and?
We did. I don't have a quantity for you in terms of maybe how much might have been lost, but we had in that 2-week cold spell. So from President's Day through the following weekend, that's when we had the single-digit temperatures, and then the following week when we had the 6 or 7 inches of snow. So that 2-week period, we had about 20 main breaks of varying sizes. We had a few service line breaks, meaning the connection between our main and somebody's individual service, but it was maybe out in the road and you thought it was a main break. And then we had somewhere between 250 and 300 calls for service for burst pipes, where the customer wanted us to turn the water off at the meter because they had either a burst pipe in their house or maybe out in their yard or in their crawl space. And I suspect there were probably more burst pipes than the ones we just got called on, that they were able to have their own shut-off valve or turn it off themselves. But just from a production standpoint, like I said, we ramped up 40% in a matter of days, and basically we're hovering here, and then we just have this big spike, plateau for a day, and then drop back down. And today we're back down to the 18 million per day.
Question on the water restrictions, John. Are they adequate? And do they cover commercial as well as the residential consumer?
That's a good question. Let us go back and take a look at that, blow the dust off of them, because they haven't been put into effect in a good long time. So we'll look at that.
Okay.
Good question.
Good job.
Is this strategy okay?
Yeah, it's great. We drifted off into the broken pipes and all that, and that's good, because I got a citizen that was disturbed that they had a leak, and I don't know what our policy is, but we recognized she had a leak,
yes,
but we only gave her a credit of a third of what the extra cost was. Isn't there a way for us to look at a citizen, if they've been using 5 gallons for the last 5 months and they got something happen and they just use 10 gallons, that we normally charge them the 5 because we recognize that they had a dent, or does our policy just say give them a certain percentage credit?
It's a very good question. It's actually adopted by council. It's actually not even a policy. It's city code.
Okay.
And it states that if you have a break, such as what your burst pipe or something like that, or leak, even if it's inside your house, it doesn't have to be outside. The homeowner is responsible for the plumbing and the pipes once it leaves the meter. So both what's outside your yard and as well as in your house. And so it says that we can give you a credit of 50% of the excess above your average. So for example, if let's say your average is 10, you use 10 every time, that's what your average. And let's say with your burst pipe, you had used 100. Okay, so you're going to pay for the 10 because that's what you always pay for. That leaves 90 left. We're going to write off half of that, which would be 45. And then you have to pay for the other. As the customer, you would be responsible for the other 45 in that example. So you would get a bill for 55 consumption instead of 10. And so that's how it's
That's
set.
a tough pill to swallow. I mean, if you got a seriously, I mean, and we always use seniors and extreme cases, but when someone is doing it, I don't know why we can't change that. I really, I don't want to have that discussion now, but I'm glad you took us over in that area, because that's something we probably need to look at.
But leaks come in many sizes too. It could be the flapper valve in a toilet, and it can run the bill up pretty quick. And so when the homeowner gets the bill and says, "Oh my goodness, I've used a lot of water. I didn't do anything different," and they find out that they've got to replace the innards of their toilet tank. These leaks happen all throughout the year. We can do a survey to see how our plan matches our neighbors. And
I wasn't comparing that. I was talking about just in the event of a freeze and a pipe burst, and there's an absorbent amount. As a matter of fact, I called with a house on Portsmouth Boulevard that was vacant, and the water was running out the front door, and nobody was there. And the fire department came, and we cut the water off from the outside. And I don't know if they ever, but that wasn't the case. If somebody had an incident like that, a burst pipe, and just lost a whole bunch of water, I just can't imagine them paying all that, knowing what is it really costing us that we even if we.
Well, I mean, it's
don't go there. We'll get it later, but I know. But it's
this strategy
that is great. That is, and good luck with DEQ. Yeah, Councilman Meeks.
I had one, and it was about they couldn't get to the meter to cut it off because of the new meter readers we got. They couldn't get to cut it off.
Call us. We'll give them a key.
Right.
The key's free.
I had a brother that called me in church. I called John in church. I'm in church, and my brothers can't get to the meter. I'm like,
were a lot of those calls the result of the new meters, Brian?
No,
they weren't.
Right. It was.
Shame on y'all for having your phones on in church.
In church, that's right. He answered in church, and I was in church when I texted him. So.
Well, it said Kenny Wright.
Thanks a lot, Brian.
The next item is this item here. You had asked us to bring more activity downtown, particularly to our two landings, one at High Street and one at the Renaissance Hotel, the North Landing. We amended the code to give the direction to the city manager to promulgate rules and regulations. And we used that so that we could find out whether or not the rules were adequate and whether or not they could work. We wanted to make sure that people only stayed there for a short period of time, because we don't want to be in competition with the private marinas. Plus, when you're there for a long time, they're apt to pump stuff overboard. And we think that the rules are adequate. Occasionally, we get somebody who wants to stay there a week or 10 days. And we don't have the mechanism to tell them to move on. And so what we need to do is amend the code to now codify these regulations for those people who come and camp out for a week, and we can then move them along or give them a citation if they don't move.
What do our signs say now? How long can they stay?
3 days.
3 days?
Yes, sir. And what you get people who will stay there 3 days, but occasionally we get someone that's there for a week, 10 days, and they'll try to explain why they're there. They think bad weather's coming, but you only can imagine what's happening to that waste. It's not being contained, it's going overboard. And so it's not good for our environment. This is our front door. So for those rare occasions where we need to say move or get a citation, we need to codify the regulations. And so I wanted to give you a heads up and see if that was okay with you.
Okay.
It seems to be working well.
Have we interfaced with our marina guy that raised all the stink? What's his name? He gave me the bill. I stopped walking that way because every time I walk by, he wanted to give me a 20-minute. What's his name? He's moved now. He was right down there at the.
Malpa's one.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, they sold it.
He was your buddy, right? He got that. Right. I didn't know your first name was Dan, but he. But anyway, all right.
All right. I had sent you.
Before we get off of this, what are the other cities doing? What are Norfolk and the other ones doing with these dockings? Are they allowing?
That's a good question.
Okay.
Norfolk is different because of Waterside and the piers there. They actually, I think, have a dock master.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And nothing's free.
Yeah, no, they pay.
It's not free.
Right.
No, it's not free.
But we get a lot of our restaurant owners. These people come and dock and get out and walk up and down High Street and
buy things.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they kind of advocate for some of these boaters. So didn't only just heard from that one guy, but you heard from some of the others too. So I didn't want them to go to Norfolk and dock.
Oh, no, sir. It's still going to be free.
Okay. Very good.
Who keeps a tally on how long they've been there?
At the North Landing, the visitor center. And they keep an eye on the High Street landing too. And what we try to do when a new boater comes up, we actually give them this second page so that they know what the regulations are. And most of them are friendly. We welcome them to our city because you'll see them push a little small hand cart down the street and go into whatever store they need to go to get their supplies. Mm-hmm. Or uncollapse a bicycle.
Yeah, I've seen
a lot of these people in transit, and they're coming from Boston, going down, and they stop in all these places. And I just want to make sure we're consistent with some of these other folks, because if they're coming in and staying a couple of days and to be able to do what they need and then move on, as long as we're
more consistent with like Elizabeth City and Beaufort and those cities that have free dockage.
Mm-hmm.
Ready to move on?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
We'll put this on the next regular agenda.
Okay.
I sent you a memo on March 6th. It was entitled Redevelopment Proposal for Greenwood Manor. And this is the old Bonneville
Excuse me, Mr.
site.
Can we discuss that last so I don't want to be in?
Yeah, let's do that so we can let him step out.
That'd be fine.
Yeah, good.
Well, let's give you a budget update. We have a big day tomorrow. We're selling bonds. And Carol, would you come up and... We really kind of underplayed what happened in New York, but what happened in New York was a big deal.
Absolutely.
If you recall, Moody's had us on AA negative outlook. When you have a negative outlook, the rating agency is compelled to re-rate you in 2 years. Our 2 years were up, and they were at a point where they could downgrade us. And because of what you've done in making the pension plans solvent, and what you've done to reduce the OPEB liability, it got us a better bond rating. They removed the negative and put stable. Will you talk about tomorrow first?
Yes, sir. Good evening. As John mentioned, we are planning to sell our bonds tomorrow, and this is a refunding or refinancing opportunity to save money. The interest rate that is most closely pegged to the one that we pay on our bonds is the 10-year Treasury, and that has fluctuated quite a bit just in the past couple of months. When we first started talking with Davenport about the refunding opportunity at the end of January, the 10-year was at 1.68. Last Friday, it popped up to a high for the year of 2.24 on the better than expected jobs report, which caused people to think that rates were going to go up. Since that time, rates have come back down a little bit. As of today, they're at 2.14%, which actually is exactly the same rate as it was the day we issued the pension obligation bonds in June of 2013. So unless something dramatically changes tomorrow, which we don't expect, we plan to issue the bonds, and we're estimating that we'll generate savings in the 5 to 6% range, which is well above the 3% minimum threshold that we have for savings on refunding.
Very good. And remember, we're not extending the term of these bonds. It will be the same term. So that doesn't change. Hopefully what will change is the interest rate and the amount of debt service that we pay, which will bring about the savings.
And we're looking at, what was the savings again, about $3 million?
About $3.5 million.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
And again, that's a guess made at the time based on certain interest rates.
As bad as the market was today, I think we'll do well tomorrow.
Well, it's a paradox.
It is.
Yeah.
Will you send us a note tomorrow and tell us?
Oh, yes, we will.
Good
job.
And, there's always the possibility that the numbers don't come in, and we just don't accept any of those bids. I mean,
We'll take a pass.
That's right, we take a pass. We thank them for their interest in our city. I want to move next to the budget. We had a very good meeting today with the new superintendent, his assistant superintendent, and his finance director. And we talked about both the operating and the capital budget. We're going to meet again next Monday.
Yes.
At 2 o'clock in the afternoon. What I'm going to recommend, and this is what I told him, that the money that they return at the end of the year, that council reappropriate those funds and reappropriate them for a capital purpose. You know that they presented you their capital list. And there are a couple of ways to do that. They can come up with a good, comfortable number estimate that they're going to end up with unspent funds of, let's say, $4 million. And if they're comfortable with that, they could tell us, and then that gets put into the CIP, and it gets put into the appropriations ordinance, so that when you adopt a budget and adopt the ordinances that go along with funding, that $4 million is already appropriated. They come to the end of the year, they've got $4 million that's not surplus. That's surplus. You don't have to do anything because you've already taken the action. Let's say that it comes in at 4.5. Then you would appropriate the additional $500,000.
Back to your budget.
So whatever that number is, in my budget message to you will be that you reappropriate those funds back to the schools for capital. And that way that's going to be on top of their capital appropriation that's in the budget anyway. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
So it might fast track some of the CIP things,
Correct.
so to speak.
Right. And we explained the
Still
fact...
foggy on our capital
Sir?
and CIP. I thought we had taken over all of that from them, and so why are we reallocating or giving them something when we should be doing it? I'm thinking they should be coming to us, and we should be taking care of all of those capital needs. Isn't that not what we actually did two years ago?
It's a multi-step process. We appropriated the funds to the school capital project so that they would be in our budget. Mm-hmm. We started working on a memorandum of understanding, and that's still a work in progress to work out the details of what you're talking about.
Okay. Because I just don't want somebody on the school side bird dogging something that we ought to do. It just should be,
right.
We gave the city, here are our list of things, and we, the city, vote on which ones we want to do, and then we make sure we get it done, and we kind of let them know, hey, we've done one of 5, and we'll do 2 of...
And that's what we're working to also.
Okay.
Yeah. I explained to the supplemental appropriation that you all made at the last meeting that you had on considering the current budget, where you appropriated 6.4, and that I have considered that part of the base budget, that it wasn't a one-time appropriation.
Right.
That appropriation came from fund balance because your budget was balanced at that time with revenues and expenditures. So that 6.4 came from fund balance. And as we told you back in January, that's the equivalent of 10 cents on the tax rate. And in order for it to be part of the budget going forward, we really need to have a funding source. And I think this is the year to celebrate. This is an investment that we're making into our education system. We're about education and quality education. So, as we told you, there is going to be a tax increase in the proposed budget. It won't all be for schools because we talked about some other things that are facing us for 15-16. We're working through the budget. I am, because of the calendar, required to give my budget to you all on March the 29th. Did I get the date? Or 30th. 30th? Whew, that extra day. And so we're working hard to bring all the numbers together. Some numbers that we're working on, for example, I mentioned the fact that one of the great decisions that you made was on OPEB, which moved the cost of post-25 retirees out of ours. And so we not only lose that cost, but we lose that liability that we have to state. And that liability was close to $219 million, and it's now down to $45 million. But at the same time, we're faced, for everybody else, increases of about 9%. When Chris gave his presentation in here, he used a 7% number. And that number will vary from organization to organization based on what your history has been. So we're dealing with our actuary to find out exactly what our cost has been over a 12-month period, what the trend is in medical cost as far as the cost going up, to come up with that number. We're having a conference call on Friday. Is it Friday?
Thursday.
Thursday. To try to nail down that number. But that's a pretty big number in our budget. So, that's where we stand.
Okay. Yeah, Dr. Edmonds.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Manager, in regards to the school board, I think it's essential that we make sure that we're walking in the same direction as far as school board is concerned and as far as what council is concerned, because in order to be in unison with one, we have to communicate the same language. And how can two walk together except they be in agreement? So we want to make sure that anything that's presented, that the school board is in agreement with where we're going. And I think if that language is clear, we have no problems.
You were eavesdropping on our conversation today because that was the tone and the message that we want to do that. We want to be in step, not only with council and the school board, but this administration with the school administration. And that's our goal.
Good.
Dr. Woodard?
Will that budget have an increase for schools? In their presentation, I thought they were just gracious to come in with a level funding, but we know that things increase.
It's too early to tell. I mean, they gave you, the 6.4 is an increase. Right. Because it's real money. It's more than what you had been appropriating the 2 previous fiscal years. So they got a big increase this year. We're making that increase permanent. They gave you a delta that was somewhere between 4.1 and 4.2. And if you were looking to fund that, you're talking about another 7 or 8 cents on the tax rate. And I got the impression that they're still sharpening their pencil, too, on what that number will be. Now, one of the things that they did tell us, because we do have the fourth quarter appropriation on your next agenda, and at least a month ago, we said, as we approach this, please tell us if there are any adjustments that you want to make. And we said the same thing today. Well, they're going to make some adjustments between categories, but they also, because of the increase in the average daily membership, ADM, they're going to get, they think they'll get another, 1.2 million increase.
Okay.
And so they're going to give us that number. Did they give us that number today?
Not yet, no.
Not yet, okay. We want to get it as soon as possible so we can give it to you, Deborah, so we can get that ordinance right on the agenda.
Okay. Sherry's presentation, didn't she indicate the state as well? It's going to have more money, a little increase there as well?
For next year, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also I'm glad you mentioned that this whole tax increase that is going to occur isn't just on the backs of the schools, but because of some other expenses.
Yes, sir.
Could we get some type of accounting printout indicating new positions that have come on board since you've been city manager, new hiring positions that were not filled at the time but have now been filled, so we can have an indication of some spending?
Sure. That's easy. I think it's easy to do. Well,
it is. Okay. All right. Very good.
Yeah.
All right.
Public
Thank you.
information.
All right. We're down to the last item on Greenwood Drive.
Okay.
Oh, is there a closed session?
No, it's not.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion. I don't want any conflicts of interest. And also, the document that was passed out, I just want to make sure on the record as returning it.
You gave it back? All right. And then you can come back for liaisons.
Okay. Well, can we do liaisons?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Is there any council liaisons, Dr. Edmonds?
Yes, sir. Very quickly. Just want to canvass the council first. How many of us have been to the Portsmouth Regional Jail? Can you raise your hands?
Serve time in it, or how did you say? I was going to say you might get all of it.
The regional jail.
Oh,
how many of us in here
Visit, yes.
have been there and visited?
Yeah.
This is my first time that I went to that I've ever visited it, and I'm amazed at how it's designed. Mm-hmm. As we drive past it, it seems so obscure to be sitting in the place where it is. And I was just flabbergasted when I went on the tour, and everybody that's in charge of anything there took me on the tour. I felt like the President of the United States when I walked up in there. But anyway, I was amazed at the way that the facility is run and the capability that it has to be even greater than what it is. I didn't try to get involved in a lot of politics as far as funding or anything like that. I was more concerned with what they do.
You didn't try to lower a cost?
Well, I talked about that piece. That's a little bit.
Okay.
But as I went through the tour, I was impressed at how the different quadrants are set off. Mm-hmm. First of all, we're operating under what we pay for. Of course, we know that. Mm-hmm. We have 204 people there, and we are paying for 250 people. So you do the math. We're going to have to pay that even if we don't have the 250 quota. But the other piece that I was very elated to see was the medical care facility. It is awesome in going there that they treat people with diabetes, people who have to have their blood circulated, and people who have any and every type of physical disease that you can think of. Not only top of that, people they have to deal with who have mental disease. They have a quality medical center. If they close up the rest of the jail, that could still take care of itself.
Better than a lot of our citizens.
Yes,
I
sir.
suspect.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And I think that's a plus because they're also dealing with rehabilitation. They're not just concerned with numbers and jobs. They're more concerned with making sure that when those persons that are under their guidance, when they leave there, they are better than they came. And I am just glad to report that that's awesome. I'm also able to see that there's no reason why we shouldn't have our quota of 250 people there. If we're going to pay for it, we ought to pay for it.
Amen.
Or if there's some city that's in it with us who have reached their maximum and they still need some more beds, and if we got some left over, why can't we get our benefit from them and allow them to pay us for some space that they might need? That's just a food for thought when y'all sleep tonight. Also, I think all of us that are involved in it, every sheriff is on the board. And there's a council member from every municipality that's on the board. And I think everybody that's on the board needs to be there. I'm talking about not just the secondary person, but the person up front, because I think it's a crucial thing that we need to look at that. We never know when we might need to take more prisoners there. The last thing I'd like to elaborate on is the fact that most of the females from the Portsmouth City Jail go to that jail. I think that's good. They have a caring and nurturing facility that helps to facilitate rehabilitation, because most of the people, when they get out of there, they're coming back into our communities, into our cities. We just don't want to open up the door and say, get out. We want to make sure that somebody's there to pick them up, make sure that the chaplain follows through on those that have been ministered to, because they're going to come right back because they can't get jobs nowhere else, so they're going to do something to go back to jail, because they know if they go to the regional jail, they're going to be better taken care of than when they're out. And so this is a significant matter that we need to understand and underscore, because I think it's going to have an effect on crime rate in our city. We got people getting shot. We got people selling drugs everywhere. We got a lot of mayhem and a lot of type of situations that's going on. And so a lot of those people end up in jail. I was also surprised that when I went to the jail that I saw a lot of people behind the bars that I knew. Amen. And then I saw a lot of people that worked there that I know. As far as equability of diversity, it's overwhelming. There's a mind-blowing experience, and that was not going there, and they answered all the tough questions that I had. I went there not just asking questions to ask questions, but to understand what this facility is all about. I think we missed the mark on really what the relevance is of this, and since it's housed in Portsmouth, that's something we ought to be able to clap our hands about, because it helps other cities. I also threw in there, since it's housed in the city of Portsmouth, we ought to be able to get lower prices than what the other cities. We do to some degree. There you go. But we ought to be able to get better. And I think when we can come together and work in harmony, we'll be able to do that. I suppose and propose that, like other things that we work with the school board, that we learn the team effort. To me, acronym for team is together, everybody achieving much. And I think when we put our heads together, that we've done a great job. And that's my report, but I'd like to end on a good note as well. I am so happy of the way we've taken care of the business of our city in a civil manner in here. That speaks volume. I guarantee you nobody's going to report it. Nobody's going to say what a good job you done. But we have to keep our focus. We have to stay and keep our minds on what our cause of duty is for here on our council. I just want to tell you all, ladies and gentlemen, job well done. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, good. Let me just, before we leave off that point, that since you are the chair this year and you recognize that deficit and that deficiency in our part, I think you know where the deficiency comes from with you being the chair and representing the city of Portsmouth, and we're the only city not abiding by the rule.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we need to work on that, and our friend the sheriff needs to do that. We're talking about dollars, we're talking about increasing taxes, and if we're spending money at the regional jail and we're not getting our dollars worth for it, that's doing a disservice to our citizens. So if we have an agreement for 250 beds or whatever, is it 50 or 54? 250. We should have 250 inmates over there, not 200. I mean, that's been an issue for quite a few years, and we can fix that if we use that team piece. And with you being the chair and knowing the sheriff, maybe we can have a conversation and getting that done. That is a real issue.
Amen. And I like to give a shout out.
It makes you look somewhat awkward being in the city and part of the original teaming agreement that put the thing together, and you're not abiding by it, and everybody's in the room looking. When are you guys going to recognize that you're spending money that you're not getting a return on?
$2,500 a day.
That's right. How much was it?
It's around, if it's 50 beds, at what, $50 a bed? Right?
Approximately.
Yeah, $2,500 a day.
I mean, sooner or later it's going to add up, and I mean, go to the taxpayers and ask for a 10% increase, and we're doing things like that. I think, there's some things we need to work on.
Well, I want to just reiterate, I know it's costly there, but sometimes we miss the benefit by just looking at the money. I want to thank Brandon for giving me good insight as to what it's all about. Y'all know I don't normally talk a whole lot unless I'm preaching or teaching, but I appreciate this opportunity to be able to say something in regards, I know there's a money issue, but in regards to the facility itself and what it promotes.
But the superintendent and that staff is professional, and they've done for you, for most of us, and to look at their capabilities and what they've done, and that superintendent is willing to do anything we want to make that place better and help our cities. And I think you get that from everybody when you talk to them. So thank you for that report. Mr. Meeks.
Speaking of budget matters, the Housing Authority is going to need some funding for the Lincoln Park project. Is that in the budget, or do you know?
Say that again.
The Lincoln Park, the tear down, the revitalization. Oh, y'all are? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, anything else? Well, the last issue that I wanted to bring up, and we are in closing, in open, and we want to keep that in open, is the search that we want to proceed with finding a new city manager. I think we're all in agreement that we want to have an open process, and we want to do a national search, correct?
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure that we're all in favor of that. And the second thing is I would like to make sure that everybody's also in favor that the mayor and the vice mayor take the lead in this effort with dealing with our human resources and whatever direction they advise us as far as getting outside help. We get that, we bring that back to you, and we make sure that everybody here is informed and everything we're doing in the process step by step. Is that okay with everybody?
You still have that company that we're dealing with?
Yeah, I'm going to talk to Miss Brimley, but I didn't want to do it before I spoke with all of you because we had one on returning at one time, and if he's not, then we need to go through the process to do that. But I just want to make sure everybody's on board with the open process. We want to do a national search, and that the vice mayor and myself take the lead on that. Okay? All right, very good. Anything else for Council Liaison? All right, Dr. Wood, if you can.
All right, if you could look at this, and hopefully you got a chance to read it after it was sent to you. Brandon, did you pass out that section of the code?
George, can you really need to leave? Okay. But I just wondered, because it's all public.
I don't think that Dr. Whitaker has any ownership in this property now.
He actually, I believe, still is technically the owner.
Okay.
And that's to be on the safe side.
Yeah, and he did the right thing by
That's
getting
right.
I was wondering why that wasn't mentioned in the document, because he's the owner of record. So why wasn't that mentioned here?
Because I did not know that.
Oh, okay. Did research it.
Well, my understanding is that the bank foreclosed on the property, took ownership of the property. Now, whether or not that has shown up in the records, probably not.
Yeah.
Because it takes some time for that recordation to come forth.
And there were delinquent taxes involved that I understand were paid today? Is that
I don't know if
correct?
they were
They
paid
were
today.
paid
2 weeks
February
ago.
20th.
2 weeks ago? Okay, how
All right,
about how about the demolition cost
They were also paid
via a lien?
at the same time. They were
Okay.
paid at the same time.
Okay, good.
Can you ask the people outside to not compete, please? So when we got this, we started looking at their request because they had a proposed resolution. And we started staffing this. We talked with the Housing Authority because we wanted to make sure that the application by this private developer was not in competition with the funds that the Housing Authority is looking for Lincoln Park. What this involves is an application that the developer is going to put in. And if it was declared such a redevelopment area, the applicant would get 10 points. And if it's not, then he starts, or she starts, without those 10 points. And the scale is something on the order of 300 points, so it's not like 100, it's 300. So 10 out of it, instead of having a perfect score of 300, without this would be 290. So we wanted to make sure that the Housing Authority was okay with this, and it's not. It's not in competition with anything that they're doing to get funds for Lincoln Park. Yesterday, Chuck was meeting with Bob on the resolution and looking at this section of the code, and came to the conclusion that the developer probably misread the code, because what they were asking to do couldn't be done when you read the full code. It's they were looking at paragraph 2. You got to go through paragraph 1 before you get to paragraph 2. You got to meet the requirements of both, not just one, to simply put it. Well, lo and behold, they called Chuck. This is yesterday. And they said, whoops, we misread the code. And so they realized that they came to the same conclusion too. Now, essentially, what this section of the code really calls for is an area that you declare a redevelopment area that's got a mixture of uses, everything from residential to commercial to industrial. And when you get to the housing, the code language is that the housing is necessary in order to bring about the development for the commercial development and to sustain the industrial development. And so it's not written just to be a site particular like this site is. Okay? Now this is a $19.6 million investment. 19.2? You want to come up? A 19.2, according to the developer, that this will pencil out to be a 19.2 million. Now this is really fresh information. As Chuck was coming into the meeting tonight, he had just gotten off the telephone with the developer, and the developer really would like to have these 10 points. And so what he's asking, if there's any Herculean way that this area, and it's an area, not this site, could be declared a redevelopment area, he would greatly appreciate it. That's problematic, because I would think that you would want to have a good, strong civic engagement process where you would have...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That was going to be my point, John. We shouldn't rush anything over there, because, you know, that's sitting right next to one of our biggest neighborhoods, and quite frankly, at some parts at risk. Neighborhood.
Very fragile.
And for us to launch into something without knowing exactly what's going to be there, to give a blank canvas to paint whatever, I'm not.
I agree.
I'm not apt to do that.
And you know, there was another project that I won't mention, but council frowned on the tax credit financing aspect of that. Some of you recall that. So we.
No, that's different. That was a whole different.
It was similar.
It was very similar.
But that had income limits on who could live in the property, which to me, getting tax credits is one thing. You can get them for historical properties and all kinds of things. But to limit how much money somebody can make to live somewhere is a different story.
Well, you have a salary range involved with this, so they're quite similar. They're first cousins.
It was similar. And the thing is that you were hearing from the neighborhood.
But I wouldn't do anything
It would
with this
be very
right
wrong-headed to try to get this done in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
When Chuck was telling them the process yesterday, that it may take into 2016 to do it right, because you don't want to do this on a unilateral basis. You want citizen input. You want the input of not only the residents but the people who have businesses.
So who's running next year?
Yeah. So
I had one.
Yeah, you may.
In speaking with them this evening, just before I got here, good evening, everybody, by the way, I'm sorry. Everybody. I asked the question, is this a deal killer? Is there a way to do this more as it should be done? Is there a way to go into 2016 with an application, as opposed to the fact that the reason these 10 credit points are important to them is that there's 9 other applicants, none of which are in the city of Portsmouth, that this application would be competing against. And therefore, for them, it's problematic to get every single point that they can if they're going to have a good shot at this. They like the site. They're committed to the community process. They don't want to say that it would be necessarily the end of their interest in this property. I was pleased to hear that. I told them I would communicate that to you all this evening, that there is a desire on the part of the city of Portsmouth anytime that if somebody wants to put $20 million into our community, and we're going to do everything we can to facilitate finding what the stats are behind it and make good recommendations based on that. So that's.
Let me give you an analogy.
Let's be clear. The attorney just showed me a paragraph that Mr. Moody is right about that income thing.
Yes.
There's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way we're going to do this. I mean, with what he just showed me in the paragraph. There's no way I'm going to vote for something.
Yeah, we were in agreement, I think, pretty solid that we would pass.
Your last meeting in November 2012. I remember it vividly. Let me say this. Think about this metaphor. You're going fishing, you're sitting in the boat. You're not going to catch any fish unless you put the line in the water. They can put this application in without anything from us, and there might be a chance that they get it approved. So, they're governing, what they do here, not you. But because this is a big deal and it really needs citizen input, you can't do it between now and April 1, and you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Mayor?
I read it this afternoon.
I like what you said about citizen input. That's great. And what we put out there as a part of that community, I would detest anything other than the type of building, living facilities than what's already out there. It's one of the largest tax bases in the city of Portsmouth. I was against building a 7-Eleven on the corner of Greenwood and Cavalier. And I'm going to be more adamant about anything other than houses being built there or quality size upscale type condos or something of that nature, and not changing the zone, because as I said, that's a quality community. You got houses that anywhere range from over $1 million on down, and I think that needs to be reckoned with. So citizen input is imperative.
Yes, sir. Yes. There is dinner, and you might want to grab a bite.
Yep, real quick.
Could you say the words, please, sir?
Yes, sir. Lord, we thank you for this festive meeting that we've had, and now we ask that you bless us with the food that has been prepared for the nourishment of our bodies. In Jesus' name we give thanks. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all.
I'm not saying
Yeah, you are.
Finish.
Yeah, you are.
It's the medicine I took.